Miguel Street, Chapter 9. Titus Hoyt, IA. This man was born to be an active and important member of a local road board in the country. An unkind fate had placed him in the city. He was a natural guide, philosopher, and friend to anyone who stopped to listen. Titus Hoyt was the first man I met when I came to Port of Spain a year or two before the war. My mother had fetched me from Chaguanas after my father died. We travelled up by train and took a bus to Miguel Street. It was the first time I had travelled in a city bus. I said to my mother, "Ma, look, they forget to ring the bell here." My mother said, "If you ring the bell, you're damn well going to get off and walk home by yourself, you hear?" And then a little later I said, "Ma, look, the sea." People in the bus began to laugh. My mother was really furious. Early next morning my mother said, "Look now, I'm giving you 4 cents. Go to the shop on the corner of this road, Miguel Street, and buy 2 hops bread for a cent apiece, and buy a penny butter, and come back quick." I found the shop and I bought the bread and the butter, the red salty type of butter. Then I couldn't find my way back. I found about 6 Miguel Streets, but none seemed to have my house. After a long time walking up and down, I began to cry. I sat down on the pavement and got my shoes wet in the gutter. Some little white girls were playing in a yard behind me. I looked at them still crying. A girl wearing a pink frock came out and said, "Why you crying?" I said, "I lost." She put her hands on my shoulder and said, "Don't cry, you know where you live?" I pulled out a piece of paper from my shirt pocket and showed her. Then a man came up. He was wearing white shorts and a white shirt, and he looked funny. The man said, "Why he crying?" in a gruff and interested way. The girl told him. The man said, "I will take him home." I asked the girl to come too. The man said, "Yes, you better come to explain to his mother." The girl said, "All right, Mr. Titus Hoyt." That was one of the first things about Titus Hoyt that I found interesting. The girl calling him Mr. Titus Hoyt. Not Titus or Mr. Hoyt, but Mr. Titus Hoyt. I later realized that everyone who knew him called him that. When we got home, the girl explained to my mother what had happened, and my mother was ashamed of me. Then the girl left. Mr. Titus Hoyt looked at me and said, "He looked like an intelligent little boy." My mother said in a sarcastic way, "Like his father." Titus Hoyt said, "No, young man, if a herring and a half cost a penny and a half, what's the cost of 3 herrings?" Even in the country, in Chaguanas, we had heard about that. Without waiting, I said, 3 pennies. Titus Hoyt regarded me with wonder. He told my mother, "This boy bright like anything, ma'am. You must take care of him and send him to good school and feed him good food so he could study well." My mother didn't say anything. When Titus Hoyt left, he said, "Cheerio." That was the second interesting thing about him. My mother beat me for getting my shoes wet in the gutter, but she said she wouldn't beat me for getting lost. For the rest of the day, I ran about the yard saying, "Cheerio, cheerio," to a tune of my own. That evening, Titus Hoyt came again. My mother didn't seem to mind. To me, Titus Hoyt said, "You can read?" I said yes. "And write?" I said yes. "Well, look," he said, "get some paper and a pencil and write what I tell you." I said, "Paper and pencil?" He nodded. I ran to the kitchen and said, "Ma, you got any paper and pencil?" My mother said, "What you think I is, a shopkeeper?" Titus Hoyt shouted, "It's for me, ma'am." My mother said, "Oh," in a disappointing way. She said, "In the bottom drawer of the bureau you go find my purse. It have a pencil in it." And she gave me a copybook from the kitchen shelf. Mr. Titus Hoyt said, "Now, young man, write. Write the address of this house in the top right hand corner, and below that the date. Then he asked, You know how we writing this letter to boy? I shook my head. He said, Boy, we're writing to the Guardian, boy. I said, The Trinidad Guardian? The paper? What, me writing to Guardian? But only big man does write to the Guardian. Titus Hoyt smiled. That's why you write in. I go surprise them. I said, What I go write to them about? He said, You go write it now, write to the editor, Trinidad Guardian. Dear sir, I am but a child of 8. How old you is? Well, it don't matter anyway. And yesterday my mother sent me to make a purchase in the city. This, dear editor, was my first peregrination in the metropolis, and I had the misfortune to wander from the path my mother had indicated. I said, Oh God, Mr. Titus Hoyt, where you learn all these big words and them? You sure you're spelling them right? Titus Hoyt smiled. I spent all afternoon making up this letter, he said. I wrote, And in the state of despair I was rescued by a Mr. Titus Hoyt of Miguel Street. This only goes to show, dear Mr. Editor, that human kindness is a quality not yet extinct in this world. The Guardian never printed the letter. When I next saw Titus Hoyt, he said, Well, never mind. One day, boy. One day I go make them sit up and take notice of every word I say. Just wait and see. And before he left, he said, Drinking your milk? He had persuaded my mother to give me half a pint of milk every day. Milk was good for the brains. It is one of the sadness of my life that I never fulfilled Titus Hoyt's hopes of my academic success. I still remember with tenderness the interest he took in me. Sometimes his views clashed with my mother's. There was the business of the cobwebs, for instance. Boy, with whom I had become friendly very quickly, was teaching me to ride. I had fallen and cut myself nastily on the shin. My mother was attempting to cure this with sooty cobwebs soaked in rum. Titus Hoyt was horrified. You ain't know what you're doing, he shouted. My mother said, Mr. Titus Hoyt, I will kindly ask you to mind your own business. The day you make a baby yourself, I go listen to what you have to say. Titus Hoyt refused to be ridiculed. He said, Take the boy to the doctor, man. I was watching them argue, not caring greatly either way. In the end, I went to the doctor. Titus Hoyt reappeared in a new role. He told my mother, For the last 2-3 months I've been taking the first aid course with the Red Cross. I go dress the boy foot for you. That really terrified me. For about a month or so afterwards, people in Miguel Street could tell when it was 9 o'clock in the morning. By my shrieks. Titus Hoyt loved his work. All this gives some clue to the real nature of the man. The next step followed naturally. Titus Hoyt began to teach. It began in a small way, after the fashion of all great enterprises. He had decided to sit for the external arts degree of London University. He began to learn Latin, teaching himself, and as fast as he learned, he taught us. He rounded up 3 or 4 of us and taught us in the veranda of his house. He kept chickens in his yard and the place stank. That Latin stage didn't last very long. We got as far as the 4th declension, and then Boy and Errol and myself began asking questions. They were not the sort of questions Titus Hoyt liked. Boy said, Mr. Titus Hoyt, I think you're making up all this, making it up as you go on. Titus Hoyt said, But I telling you, I'm not making it up. Look, here it is in black and white. Errol said, I feel, Mr. Titus Hoyt, that one man sit down one day and make all this up and have everybody else learning it. Titus Hoyt asked me, What is the accusative singular of bellum? Feeling wicked because I was betraying him, I said to Titus Hoyt, Mr. Titus Hoyt, when you was my age, how you would have feel if somebody did ask you that question? And then boy asked, Mr. Titus Hoyt, what is the meaning of ablative case? So the Latin lesson ended. But however much we laughed at him, we couldn't deny that Titus Hoyt was a deep man. Hat used to say, he is a thinker, that man. Titus Hoyt thought about all sorts of things, and he thought dangerous things sometimes. Hat said, I don't think Titus Hoyt like God, you know. Titus Hoyt would say, the thing that really matters is faith. Look, I believe that if I pull out this bicycle lamp from my pocket here and set it up somewhere and really believe in it and pray to it, what I pray for go come. That is what I believe. And so saying, he would rise and leave, not forgetting to say, cheerio. He had the habit of rushing up to us and saying, silence everybody, I just been thinking. Listen to what I just been thinking. One day he rushed up and said, I been thinking how this war could end. If Europe could just sink for 5 minutes, all the Germans go drown. Others said, but England got drown too. Titus Hoyt agreed and looked sad. I lose my head again, he said. I lose my head. And he wandered away, muttering to himself and shaking his head. One day he cycled right up to us when we talking about the Barbados-Trinidad cricket match. Things were not going well for Trinidad and we were worried. Titus Hoyt rushed up and said, silence, I just been thinking. Look boys, if ever strike you that the world not real at all, it ever strike you that we have the only mind in the world and you're just thinking up everything else? Like me here, having the only mind in the world and thinking up you people here, thinking up the war and all the houses and the ships and them in the harbour. That ever cross your mind? His interest in teaching didn't die. We often saw him going about with his books. These books were about teaching. Titus Hoyt used to say, is a science man. The trouble with Trinidad is that the teachers don't have the science of teaching. And is the biggest thing in the world, man, having the minds of the young to train. Think of that. Think. It soon became clear that whatever we thought about it, Titus Hoyt was bent on training our minds. He formed the Miguel Street Literary and Social Youth Club and had it affiliated to the Trinidad and Tobago Youth Association. We used to meet in his house, which was well supplied with things to eat and drink. The walls of his house were now hung and improving quotations, some typed, some cut out of magazines and pasted on bits of cardboard. I also noticed a big thing called timetable. From this I gathered that Titus Hoyt was to rise at 5:30, read something from Greek philosophers until 6, spend 15 minutes bathing and exercising, another 5 reading the morning paper, and 10 on breakfast. It was a formidable thing altogether. Titus Hoyt said, if I follow the timetable, I will be educated man about 3-4 years. The Miguel Street Club didn't last very long. It was Titus Hoyt's fault. No man in his proper senses would have made Boy secretary. Most of Boy's minutes consisted of the names of people present, and then we all had to write and read something. The Miguel Street Library and Social Club became nothing more than a gathering of film critics. Titus Hoyt said, no man, we just can't have all you boys talking about pictures all the time. I will have to get some propaganda for you boys. Boy said, Mr. Titus Hoyt, what we want with propaganda is a German thing. Titus Hoyt smiled. That is not the proper meaning of the word, boy. I am using the word in its proper meaning. Is education, boy. That make me know things like that. Boy was sent as our delegate to the Youth Association annual conference. When he came back, Boy said, "It's a hell of a thing at the youth conference. It's only a pack of old people it have there." The attraction of the Coca-Cola and the cakes and the ice cream began to fade. Some of us began staying away from meetings. Titus Hoyt made one last effort to keep the club together. One day he said, "Next Sunday the club will go on a visit to Fort George." There were cries of disapproval. Titus Hoyt said, "You see, you people don't care about your country. How many of you know about Fort George? Not one of you here know about the place. But it's history, man. Your history. And you must learn about things like that. You must remember that the boys and girls of today are the men and women of tomorrow. The old Romans had a saying, you know, mens sana in corpore sano. I think we will make the walk to Fort George." Still, no one wanted to go. Titus Hoyt said, "At the top of Fort George it have a stream, and it cool, and the water crystal clear. You could bathe there when we get to the top." We couldn't resist that. The next Sunday, a whole group of us took the trolleybus to Mucurapo. When the conductor came round to collect the fares, Titus Hoyt said, "Come back a little later," and he paid the conductor only when we got off the bus. The fare for everybody came up to about 2 shillings, but Titus Hoyt gave the conductor a shilling and said, "We don't want any ticket, man." The conductor and Titus Hoyt laughed. It was a long walk up the hill, red and dusty and hot. Titus Hoyt told us, "This fort was built at a time when the French and them was planning to invade Trinidad." We gasped. We had never realized that anyone considered us so important. Titus Hoyt said, "That was in 1803, when we was fighting Napoleon." We saw a few old rusty guns at the side of the path and heaps of rusty cannonballs. I asked, "The French invade Trinidad, Mr. Titus Hoyt?" Titus Hoyt shook his head in a disappointed way. "No, they didn't attack, but we was ready, man, ready for them." Boy, he said, "You sure it have this stream up there you tell us about, Mr. Titus Hoyt?" Titus Hoyt said, "What you think I is, a liar?" Boy, he said, "I ain't saying nothing." We walked and sweated. Boy took off his shoes. Errol said, "If it ain't have that stream up there, somebody going to catch hell." We got to the top, had a quick look at the graveyard where there were a few tombstones of British soldiers dead long ago, and we looked through the telescope at the city of Port of Spain, large and sprawling beneath us. We could see the people walking in the streets as large as life. Then we went looking for the stream. We couldn't find it. Titus Hoyt said, "It must be here somewhere. When I was a boy I used to bathe in it." Boy, he said, "And what happened now? It dry up?" Titus Hoyt said, "It looks so." Boy, he got really mad, and you couldn't blame him. It was hard work coming up that hill, and we were all hot and thirsty. He insulted Titus Hoyt in a very crude way. Titus Hoyt said, "Remember, boy, you are the secretary of the Miguel Street Literary and Social Club. Remember that you have just attended a meeting of the Youth Association as our delegate. Remember these things." Boy, he said, "Go to hell, Hoyt." We were aghast. So the literary club broke up. It wasn't long after that Titus Hoyt got his inter-arts degree and set up a school of his own. He had a big sign placed on the garden. "London External, passes in Cambridge, school certificate guaranteed." One year, the Guardian had a brilliant idea. They started the Needy Cases Fund to help needy cases at Christmas. It was popular, and after a few years was called the Neediest Cases Fund. At the beginning of November, the Guardian announced the target for the fund, and it was a daily excitement until Christmas Eve to see how the fund arose. It was always front page news, and everybody who gave got his name in the papers. In the middle of December one year, when the excitement was high, Miguel Street was in the news. Had showed us the paper, and we read, "Follow the example of this any time." The smallest and the most touching response to our appeal to bring Yuletide cheer to the unfortunate has come in a letter from Mr. Titus Hoyt, IA, a headmaster of Miguel Street, Port of Spain. The letter was sent to Mr. Hoyt by one of his pupils who wishes to remain anonymous. We have Mr. Hoyt's permission to print the letter in full. Dear Mr. Hoyt, I am only 8, and, as you doubtless know, I am a member of the Guardian Tiny Mites League. I read Auntie Juanita every Sunday. You, dear Mr. Hoyt, have always extolled the virtue of charity, and you have spoken repeatedly of the fine work the Guardian Neediest Cases Fund is doing to bring Yuletide cheer to the unfortunate. I have decided to yield to your earnest entreaty. I have very little money to offer, a mere 6 cents, in fact, but to take it, Mr. Hoyt, to send it to the Guardian Neediest Cases Fund. May it bring Yuletide cheer to some poor unfortunate. I know it is not much, but like the widow, I give my mite. I remain, dear Mr. Hoyt, one of your pupils. And there was a large photograph of Titus Hoyt smiling and pop-eyed in the flash of the camera. End of chapter 9.